If hidden motives shape outcomes, the first question we need to ask is whose motives were influenced by the assassination of Charlie Kirk on September 10, 2025, at Utah Valley University. The situation is complex because people naturally respond with strong emotions when grief, respect, and outrage converge. It's easy to let emotion dominate reasoning, but to understand what happened, we must approach it carefully and analytically. Candace Owens has made it clear that her concern is not about claiming a conspiracy. Instead, she is pointing to patterns in how organizations and narratives behave after such events. For example, she has raised questions about how Turning Point USA handled operations following Charlie's death, focusing in particular on Erica Kirk's role as the new CEO. Candace observed that Erica's high public visibility, the emotional messaging, and aggressive scheduling of book tours and live streams might have exposed both her family and her organization to unnecessary public scrutiny. This critique is not personal, it is about structure and leadership under extreme stress. At the same time, Erica publicly condemned people who celebrated her husband's death, calling such behavior sick and pointing out the emotional trauma and societal dehumanization displayed online. Observers note that grief is natural and valid, but balancing private mourning with public exposure is difficult, especially when the media and social networks closely watch every action. Other commentators, such as David Sirota and Andy No, have made similar observations, emphasizing the importance of transparency and careful evaluation of facts rather than quickly accepting a polished narrative. Candace Owens' perspective aligns with this idea. Institutions often deliver fast and highly polished explanations that exceed what logic would support given the complexity of the investigation. Well, believers, this is not a moment to act. This is a moment to act sober mindedly. Truth emerges over time, and human systems are designed to protect advantage more than justice or fairness. The question right now is not who committed the crime. A suspect has been arrested and has had their first hearing during this past week. But who benefited politically, institutionally, or strategically? Understanding these incentives and the structural consequences of the event provides a foundation for evaluating motive objectively rather than emotionally. Examining who benefited has less to do with identifying a mastermind and more about recognizing the structural consequences of sudden disruption. In the weeks following Charlie's death, multiple political and organizational observers highlighted shifts in influence, media space, and public sympathy. Within Turning Point USA, Erica Kirk's new role as CEO placed her at the center of operational, fundraising, and messaging responsibilities. Candace Owens publicly questioned whether Erica's approach, whether she's appearing in high visibility events and heavily relying on emotional appeals, was strategically sound during such a sensitive period. Candace suggested that a period of private reflection or temporary withdrawal might have been more effective, reducing exposure to criticism and protecting both the organization and the grieving family, which is what a lot of people around the world echo. Reality TV personality Christine Quinn publicly criticized Erica, accusing her of neglecting her children amid these obligations, sparking social media backlash, but also highlighting the real pressure of public leadership in grief. These organizational shifts matter because behavior patterns of donors, staff, and affiliated institutions often reflect perceived gaps or vacuums in leadership. Financial contributors to Turning Point USA, some of whom hold broader conservative activism ties, adjusted their public presence after Charlie's death. Some stepped aside, others reprioritized projects, revealing the structural movement even in the absence of direct coordination. Similarly, policy proposals Charlie had opposed gained traction within institutions shortly after his death. Analysts describe this as post-event acceleration, where sudden removal of an obstructing voice clears paths for pre-existing initiatives to thrive. Observing these outcomes is not an accusation. It is a recognition of predictable institutional behavior. From a kingdom perspective, believers are instructed to interpret human action, understanding that incentive and advantage, not virtue, primarily drive behavior. This disciplined analysis mirrors the method Candace employs, identifying patterns and gaps without assigning conspiratorial intent, but instead evaluating structural realities that shape the observable outcomes. Patterns of advantage and rapid institutional adjustment are neither novel nor unique to this context. Analysts have drawn parallels between Charlie's death and prior political destabilizations where motive, whether direct or circumstantial, aligned with observable outcomes. Historical examples include the 2011 shooting of Pakistani politician Salman Taseer and the 2016 assassination of UK MP Joe Cox. In both cases, the shooter's personal motives dominated initial narratives, yet political and institutional landscapes shifted predictably afterward. Similarly, modern analysts have noted that the narrative following Charlie's death was accelerated and unusually cohesive, aligning with patterns of post event coordination observed in intelligence and political science studies. In addition, the broader mega influencer ecosystem experienced fractures. Commentators such as Nick Fuentes publicly threatened to expose Candace if the upcoming TPUSA live stream failed, creating deepening divisions between public figures and illustrating how crisis can amplify existing rivalries. Even among TPUSA leadership, Blake Neff declined Candace's invitation to participate in the Charlie Focus live stream, opting to proceed independently or with his friends. Pretty sure he was too scared and generally just not up for the challenge of answering questions he may not have the station for, which is, what it is. The dynamics reveal how sudden disruption exposes fissures in networks of influence. Kingdom citizens can observe such fractures without adopting cynicism. Scripture repeatedly emphasizes the importance of sober mindedness, of patience, of discernment. Evaluating outcomes with these principles in mind enables understanding of human behavior and the structural rhythms of power. Candace Owens' commentary reflects this perspective by noting inconsistencies, evaluating leadership decisions, and highlighting predictable advantages gained by other actors. She demonstrates rational skepticism anchored in observable patterns and moral clarity. Central to Candace's perspective is the principle that institutions generally act strategically rather than emotionally. A principle observable historically, analytically, and scripturally. Agencies, media organizations, and political actors operate according to risk assessment, according to incentive alignment, and long term objectives. When she observed how quickly institutions produced uniform, clean narratives following Charlie's death, Candace raised questions not about the guilt of the suspect, which had already been addressed at that time, but about timing, about framing, and the absence of visible tension between involved parties. Will Summer noted inconsistencies in early public accounts and stressed the importance of transparency and honest scrutiny, while Peter Beinhardt highlighted the need for measured communication and thoughtful analysis rather than rushed conclusions. Hansen's commentary is consistent with these rational critiques, but it also introduces a spiritual lens. As believers, our allegiance is to God's truth rather than to polished human narratives. Scripture calls Christians to test all claims and hold fast to discernment. In this context, Erica Kirk's high visibility actions, including the book tours, the live stream appearances, and engagement with media during grief, can be analyzed through both organizational and kingdom frameworks. Observers have noted that Public exposure increases scrutiny and invites criticism, even when intentions are valid. Meanwhile, statements condemning those celebrating Charlie's death, which are morally and emotionally sound, do not absolve public figures from the consequences of high visibility behavior during an incredibly vulnerable period. Paying attention to how people and organizations act during a crisis, like changes in donors, new policy momentum, or shifts in leadership, helps believers understand what drives decisions without assuming a secret plot. Candace Owens approaches this in a way that fits her spiritual perspective. She combines careful observation, moral clarity, and lessons from history to encourage thoughtful and calm evaluation. As kingdom citizens, we are called to base ourselves on God's truth, to avoid being swayed by emotion and resist simple explanations. This helps us handle complex events with clear thinking and patience. The assassination also catalyzed fragmentation within right wing media circles, further complicating the narrative landscape. MAGA aligned commentators began clashing publicly over responsibility, messaging, and perceived mismanagement of the aftermath. Nick Fuentes threatening to expose Candace if the TPUSA livestream failed illustrates how personal rivalries and ideological disagreements have escalated under stress, distracting from substantive examinations of the event itself. These conflicts demonstrate how disruption amplifies existing fissures within networks of influence, producing competing narratives, internal divisions, and strategic posturing. For believers, this presents an opportunity to practice discernment. The emotional intensity of such disputes can mislead audiences, while strategic behavior often appears adversarial, but it is structurally driven. Observers noted that the feud extended beyond media personalities to institutional actors, highlighting tension between public influence and operational priorities. Kingdom perspective emphasizes that authority in God's kingdom operates on clarity and truth, not manipulation, not emotional leverage or coercion. Candace Owens' insistence on evaluating patterns rather than taking sides models this approach. She assesses behavior based on incentives, historical patterns, and observable outcomes rather than responding to personal attacks for the most part. Like, come on, come on. I mean, you have to admit that sometimes you have to clap back. Sometimes they be trying too much. So recognizing this helps believers maintain clarity amidst a noisy, fragmented media environment and resist being swayed by emotional posturing or factionalism. It also underscores the importance of separating public spectacle from structural analysis when examining outcomes from disruptive events. Another dimension that Candace highlighted involves potential foreign surveillance linked to the Charlie Kirk assassination. She reported that Egyptian military aircraft tracked Erica Kirk's travel nearly 70 times in the months following the incident, suggesting that global actors were monitoring movements related to TPUSA leadership, while not implying coordination in the assassination itself. This observation underscores how high-profile political events draw attention from foreign actors interested in ideological, cultural, or strategic developments. Intelligence history shows that foreign governments routinely monitor politically significant figures, particularly in periods of heightened polarization or leadership transitions. Tucker Carlson confirmed this report, lending credibility to the claim without transforming it into a conspiracy. In parallel, the rapid alignment of domestic institutional messaging after Charlie's death created an environment where information flow was tightly managed. For believers, understanding the broader operational environment, whether it's both domestic and international, highlights the importance of sober mindedness, patience, and discernment. Scripture reminds us in Proverbs 2 that discretion shall preserve thee, understanding shall keep thee, emphasizing the value of measured observation in complex situations. Recognizing structural dynamics, international surveillance, and post event coordination does not necessitate fear or cynicism. Instead, it equips Christians to navigate the broader landscape of influence, power, and strategic behavior while maintaining allegiance to God's truth above human narratives and using God's power to bring his will to the earth, with the understanding that his word is the final arbiter of all systems. Ultimately, examining leadership challenges, media fragmentation, and international attention through a kingdom lens provides practical guidance for believers. Candace Owens' approach illustrates disciplined analysis. She is observing behavior, she is recognizing structural incentives and questioning narrative polish without resorting to speculation or personal attacks. Erica Kirk's public mourning, coupled with operational responsibilities, demonstrates the tension between grief and public expectation, offering a case study in human vulnerability under pressure. The ongoing MAGA influencer disputes highlight how conflict can obscure clarity, while foreign monitoring demonstrates the operational realities that surround high profile political actors. Kingdom citizens can engage these observations without fear or cynicism by anchoring in truth rather than emotion. As 1 John 4, verse 4 reminds us, greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. Faith equips us to discern patterns, evaluate institutional behavior, and understand motives without succumbing to deception. By separating structural observation from personal speculation, believers can analyze outcomes, they can anticipate predictable behaviors, and maintain hope. Understanding the interplay of personal grief, organizational dynamics, media fragmentation, and global attention allows us to see human systems for what they are: fallible, reactive, and driven by incentives. In contrast, God's kingdom provides consistency, clarity, and enduring authority. Applying this perspective to the assassination of Charlie Kirk equips Christians to navigate public events with wisdom, patience, and discernment, holding fast to truth while recognizing the impermanence and complexity of worldly power.